Welcome to Great Travel Documentary, where every city has a secret, and we're here to tell it. Oakland, once the beating heart of the San Francisco Bay Area, now stands as a stark battlefield in America's silent civil war against homelessness. A crisis so profound that it shatters the very notion of the American dream. Come to Oakland, they say, where opportunities thrive and dreams are built. But just beneath the glossy veneer of luxury condos, polished skyscrapers, and bustling tech corridors, a far darker reality festers. As of 2024, more than 5,490 individuals are experiencing homelessness in Oakland, a 9% increase from just 2 years prior, with the number nearly doubling over the past 5 years to over 5,000. This isn't a distant issue tucked away in far-off corners. It's a glaring symptom of a deeper wound, another grim chapter in the broader homelessness crisis plaguing America. What's truly staggering is that 67% of these individuals are unsheltered, meaning thousands endure day and night without a roof over their heads, living in tents, broken-down cars, makeshift shacks, or simply out in the open, exposed to the elements and constant danger. The signs of collapse are no longer hidden. They sleep in doorways, line freeway shoulders, and gather in the cracked lots behind newly built condos, their weary figures drifting like the living dead across pavements and inside battered vehicles that someone now calls home. An alarming 57% of those currently homeless have never been homeless before, pushed onto the streets not by personal failure, but by systemic collapse, a direct consequence of the expiration of pandemic-era eviction protections that once offered a fragile lifeline. Hotspots like East 12th Street, stretching along the BART tracks, have become symbols of neglect, where dozens of tents cram onto sidewalks next to high-voltage power poles, their roofs cobbled together from rusty metal sheets, plastic tarps, wooden pallets, and even old traffic signs. No clean water, no electricity, no hope. Wood Street, another chaotic hotspot, once housed over 300 people under the bridges spanning the highway, where they cooked with old gas stoves, bathed with rainwater collected in plastic containers, and gathered firewood to keep warm under the shadow of wheels rolling overhead. Lake Merritt, once a jewel of the city, now wrestles with a dual identity as a scenic destination and an encampment zone. These are not places of living. They are zones of survival, where despair has surpassed the limits of control, turning them into no-go zones that even the police avoid. One officer admitted, "Stepping into the alleys here is no different from playing a survival game. It's really too risky." In the heart of Oakland, just steps away from booming tech companies and luxury developments, a quiet humanitarian crisis unfolds in plain sight. A city where the American dream rots in silence, one broken spirit at a time. Oakland's homelessness crisis didn't erupt overnight. It's a slow-burning tragedy forged by decades of systemic neglect, skyrocketing housing costs, and policy failures that prioritize profit over people. The scariest truth is that this city didn't fall into crisis because of a storm, war, or global pandemic. Instead, Oakland is collapsing in silence, so quietly that even those who once lived here didn't realize until it was too late. At the heart of this crisis lies a chronic shortage of affordable housing. There are only 34 affordable units for every 100 low-income households, leaving nearly 2/3 of the most vulnerable stranded, competing for limited space, or forced into impossible choices. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Oakland averages $2,568 per month, soaring to $3,007 in downtown areas, nearly the entire income of a full-time minimum wage worker. In some central areas, a studio can cost $3,000, a price that excludes even skilled professionals like doctors and lawyers, as one resident exclaimed. "Who pays $3,000 for a studio? Come on." The cost of living has skyrocketed by 58% above the national average, from food to fuel to utilities, while wages remain stagnant, as if the entire system were frozen. Gentrification exacerbates the problem, steadily displacing long-time residents, particularly in historically Black and Latino neighborhoods. As new developments move in and property values spike, communities that built Oakland are pushed out, priced out, and left with nowhere to go, their vibrant culture erased one eviction at a time. The end of pandemic-era eviction moratoriums poured gasoline on an already raging fire. thrusting thousands of renters, especially Black and Latino households, into crisis after protections expired. An alarming 57% of those currently homeless have never been homeless before, pushed onto the streets not by personal failure, but by systemic collapse. Mental health and addiction compound the crisis. 31% of Oakland's homeless population struggles with severe mental health conditions, and 25% battles substance abuse, yet access to consistent care, stable housing, or recovery opportunities remains limited. Social welfare programs, the last lifeline for the poor, elderly, and disabled, have been cut back, reduced, and gradually dismantled. For those on Social Security, benefits of about $1,700 a month cannot cover rent, medicine, food, and utilities, turning seniors into forgotten boats in a market storm. It's easy and politically convenient to blame homelessness on mental illness, substance abuse, or so-called bad decisions. But those explanations barely scratch the surface. Homelessness in America often begins with something as simple as an unexpected medical bill, a sudden layoff, or a landlord's notice taped to a door. This crisis is not inevitable. It's the product of choices, of policies that prioritize developers over tenants, profit over people, and short-term gain over long-term stability. Homelessness in Oakland isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a humanitarian crisis that shatters lives and erodes the city's moral fabric, turning the American dream into an endless nightmare for thousands. Behind every statistic are real people with stories of shattered dreams, their voices echoing the daily loss of dignity, safety, and hope. I'm not a man who could live on the street. I can survive on the street, but I don't belong on the street. None of us belong on the street, a homeless resident shared, his frustration palpable. This was unjust, unfair, inhumane. Another lamented after their camp on East 12th Street was torn down, leaving behind a ton of trash and nowhere to go. I don't like being homeless. I have nobody to help me, not even my own mom or my baby daddy. Nobody. It's hard. The elderly, who once built this city with their labor, are among the hardest hit. The number of homeless people over 60 is rapidly increasing. Their Social Security benefits of about $1,700 a month unable to cover rent, medicine, food, and utilities. Many once had homes and stability, but a single prolonged illness, an uncovered medical bill, or a rent increase of a few $100s can wipe them out completely. They choose to leave their homes to avoid burdening their children, living in old cars, bathing with warm water bottles left in the sun, eating free meals, and praying each evening that tomorrow's weather won't be too harsh. They no longer dream far. They only ask for a roof, a small bed, a warm cup of tea, and someone to check on them. But this society, with its cold pace of development and misplaced priorities, has left them behind, cruelly and silently. Children, too, bear the scars of this crisis, their presence often too quiet to notice, yet their wide-open eyes in the dark silently witness a stolen childhood. Many lack birth certificates, don't attend school, or have health insurance. The luckier ones go to class in donated, worn-out uniforms, oversized shoes, and backpacks filled with more anxiety than books, while others dream of a place to sleep without arguments or a day without moving their belongings after a shelter clearance. They grow up learning survival skills in an environment of injustice and indifference, not trust in society. When a child doesn't know the love of society, can they grow into a citizen who loves society? And if we turn a blind eye to their innocent eyes under the bridge today, who will save us tomorrow when they grow up without trust in anyone? The pre-retirement adults who laid the first bricks for Oakland's factories, drove its buses, taught in its schools, and tended its streets, veterans, workers, teachers, are now huddled under bridges or counting coins for expired bread at gas stations. They believed hard work would secure a place to return to, but they were the first to be turned away by the very dream they built. In Oakland, the American dream doesn't disappear overnight. It shatters slowly, piece by piece, leaving behind faces people avoid, names no one remembers, and a problem no one wants to acknowledge. Oakland's response to homelessness is a sieve, not a safety net, costing taxpayers billions while leaving the crisis unresolved as policies prioritize image over solutions. City authorities frequently dismantle encampments like those on East 12th Street and Wood Street, calling these campaigns cleanups or urban space cleansing to ensure community safety. But which community? Clearly, they do not consider the people living here as part of that community. The sounds of splintering wood and clanging metal from dismantled camps have become a familiar tune for residents. Yet after each eviction, people return, not because they like these places, but because they have nowhere else to go. The closure of the infamous Wood Street encampment, where over 300 people once lived, was touted as a solution, but alternative shelters remain woefully inadequate, with limited space and inconsistent services. Each site tells the same story: move them along, but never move them forward. The city has spent over $7.2 million to close 3 major encampments and move people into temporary hotel shelters. But this is no solution. It's a game of musical chairs played with human lives. When the music stops, most are still left standing in the street. Worse, 2 of West Oakland's largest shelters are slated to close by mid-2025, not because the need has lessened but due to expired leases, bureaucratic delays, and financial mismanagement that officials seem more interested in burying than fixing. In a city where thousands sleep outside every night, shutting down shelters isn't just reckless, it borders on inhumane. Yet, leaders stand at podiums, touting progress with straight faces, their actions feeling more like an elaborate PR campaign to polish the city's image than a genuine effort to address the rot underneath. Policies like SB 43 and Care Court, intended to intervene in cases of severe mental illness or addiction, draw fierce criticism for being reactive at best, stepping in only after lives have unraveled, not before. Prevention remains elusive, and instead of investing in long-term solutions like permanent supportive housing, Oakland defaults to short-term responses: temporary shelters, crisis clinics, and public cleanups that shuffle people from one sidewalk to another without solving anything. It's a pattern as old as the homelessness crisis itself, a bandage slapped over a wound that demands real surgery. Some overnight shelter programs for families with young children and school initiatives providing free breakfast and uniforms have been introduced, but they haven't achieved viable results. The system remains overloaded, shelters insufficient, and support programs limited by temporary budgets or cumbersome bureaucratic procedures. How can Oakland claim to address homelessness when it can't even keep its most basic safety nets intact? Homelessness in Oakland unravels the very threads that hold communities together, creating a domino effect that erodes the city's social fabric and environment. Neighborhoods near large encampments like East 12th Street and Wood Street bear the brunt of the chaos. Fires break out in abandoned lots, over 100 recorded in Wood Street, one even closing the MacArthur Freeway interchange. Property crimes spike in once quiet streets, and violent confrontations become a grim norm, not an exception. Local businesses, some family-owned for generations, are closing their doors, unable to survive the loss of customers and the constant threat of theft or vandalism. Families, fearful for their safety and weary of watching parks and sidewalks transform into survival zones, are packing up and moving elsewhere, leaving public spaces meant for celebration as battlegrounds between desperation and dwindling civic life. Residents near encampments live with unease, feeling both pity and fear as shabby camps, garbage odors, and wandering figures drain vitality from the cityscape, forcing families to change commuting routes or transfer their children to avoid these areas. The environmental fallout is equally devastating. Untreated human waste seeps into the soil and waterways. Makeshift structures rot and collapse, leaving debris fields that no city crew can keep up with. Contaminated runoff pollutes creeks and rivers, affecting not just the homeless, but everyone in the surrounding area. Homelessness in America is no longer just a humanitarian crisis. It's an environmental emergency, an economic burden, and a moral indictment. Public schools are short on teachers, budgets are cut, the community healthcare system is overwhelmed, small businesses are closing one after another, and residents with means are leaving. The remaining people live in a state of patience and vague despair, not knowing when it will be their turn to be pushed out. This crisis is breaking down community structures, paralyzing the service system, eroding trust in the government, and causing the next generations to grow up with the feeling that no one is truly at the helm of this city anymore. Homelessness in Oakland is not a glitch in the system. It is the system speaking back to us. A brutal mirror showing a society that long ago decided profits matter more than people, appearances more than real solutions. Oakland's crisis is a silent accusation that what we call urban civilization is often just a fresh coat of paint over a rusting machine. The more skyscrapers rise, the more bustling entertainment districts appear, the more makeshift tents spring up on sidewalks, under bridges, and along roadsides, constructed from plastic tarps, rotting wooden crates, and faded pieces of cloth. This is not a dystopian fantasy. It's the daily reality in Oakland, where the concept of development has been distorted, no longer about inclusion, but a silent process of pushing out those who can't keep up. Society has learned to look away, passing by human suffering with headphones in, eyes averted, hearts protected by the belief that it's not our problem. But it is. It always has been. Housing isn't a luxury for the deserving. It's a fundamental right, as basic as water, as essential as air. When cities allow people to rot in plain sight, when governments cut corners and call it policy, when we turn homelessness into a political talking point instead of a human emergency, the rot doesn't stay at the margins. It eats away at the community's core. Gentrification has turned Oakland from a community city into a commodity for investors, with luxury condos and $7 lattes replacing affordable homes. The very people who build these developments, installing wiring, cleaning streets, serving in cafes, are the first to be displaced when land values rise beyond their means. They weren't forgotten. They were deliberately excluded from the vision of a developed Oakland from the start. If a city can't protect its weakest members, what's it ultimately existing for? Oakland shows us what happens when indifference becomes a strategy, but how much longer are we willing to look away? Oakland doesn't need more temporary shelters, hotel vouchers, or cosmetic sweeps. It needs bold, systemic change to address the root causes of homelessness and restore dignity to those who've been forgotten. Permanent, supportive housing must be the foundation. Affordable units paired with wraparound services like mental health support, addiction treatment, and employment assistance are the only proven way to lift people out of homelessness for good. The Housing First model, which has cut chronic homelessness by up to 80% in some cities, should be expanded, providing stable homes without conditions as a basis for rebuilding lives. Building a few transitional units isn't enough. We need permanent places where people can live without fear of returning to the streets. Access to mental health care and substance abuse treatment must be a right, not a privilege. Instead of criminalizing addiction or untreated mental illness, Oakland must invest in compassionate care, mobile outreach teams, crisis intervention programs, and long-term therapy that meets people where they are, addressing root causes, not just symptoms. Financial and legal support are equally critical. Emergency rental assistance, free legal aid, and fair housing protections can prevent evictions before families fall into the abyss, a cheaper and less traumatic solution than rescuing them after the fact. True collaboration is essential. City leaders, nonprofits, grassroots organizers, and people with lived experience of homelessness must work together to build solutions that work on the ground. Their insight isn't optional, it's vital. Above all, we must stop funneling public funds into luxury projects masquerading as mixed-income developments. Resources should go toward deeply affordable housing that working families, single parents, veterans, and minimum wage workers can actually afford. Homelessness isn't inevitable. It's a choice we make or refuse to keep making. We must demand change, challenge elected officials, support organizations fighting for real solutions, advocate for affordable housing initiatives, and refuse to accept homelessness as the norm. Share your thoughts in the comments to amplify these voices. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these stories in the light. Together, we can rewrite Oakland's story, ensuring no one is left in the shadows, because every person's survival matters, and change starts with us. Oakland, once a starting point for new lives where the American dream was rooted in every brick and drop of sweat, now stands as a cracked mirror reflecting the disintegration of that dream, a city where dreams rot, and taxpayers pay billions to mask the decay. The cramped tents beside magnificent skyscrapers, the children growing up without a complete childhood, the elderly who built this city huddling in the cold at street corners. They are terrifying secrets Oakland harbors as it loses its identity, community, and soul. This crisis isn't a glitch. It's the system speaking back, a brutal reflection of a society that prioritizes profits over people, appearances over solutions. Oakland today is a warning, not an exception. If we don't act, what's happening here will become the future of other cities across America. The tragedy isn't just the tense or the suffering. It's our indifference, the way we've learned to look away, hearts protected by the belief that it's not our problem. But it is, and always has been. Housing isn't a luxury for the deserving. It's a fundamental right, as basic as water, as essential as air. When a city allows people to rot in plain sight, when governments cut corners and call it policy, when we turn homelessness into a talking point instead of a human emergency, the rot eats at the community's core. If even those who built Oakland can be swept away, who among us can be assured they won't be next? Oakland's crisis is a cry for help, a stark reminder that behind every statistic is a human story worth saving. If this documentary stirred something in you, a spark of sorrow, a flame of anger, or a resolve to act, don't let it fade. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's spark a conversation that can't be ignored. Like, share, and subscribe to Daily Homeless News to amplify these unheard voices and support more stories that matter. But don't stop there. Take a step further. Support local organizations like the Coalition for the Homeless, volunteer, donate, or advocate for affordable housing in your community. Together, we can rewrite Oakland's story, ensuring no one is left in the shadows. Join us on this journey, and stay tuned for our next documentary, where we'll continue uncovering the untold stories that shape our world. Thank you for watching, because change begins with us.